Good evening, everyone. I'm David Bohigian, the CEO of Meridian, and I'm thrilled to see the energy in the room tonight. I really want to start by thanking our guests here tonight, including our partners at TKO Group, and in particular, Dean Garfield, who helped get things kicked off here tonight. So thank you, Dean. And there's so many leaders from business, government, and the theory at Meridian is you're all diplomats, and we are thrilled that you're all here. I want to thank our actually Senate confirmed and other State Department diplomats as well. Sarah Rogers, Undersecretary, is she here yet? Not here yet, but we'll look forward to seeing her, and she gave tremendous remarks today. Ambassador Monica Crowley, Assistant Secretary Kate Dillon's here with us tonight. Darren Beatty at the U.S. Institute of Peace, Rob Plasick, and the rest of the sports diplomacy team at the State Department. Thank you all for being here, and thanks for supporting the important work at Meridian and around the world. I also want to thank our presenting sponsor, that's American Global Strategies, in particular my friend David Malpass, who's tall, but I don't see him in the room. Yeah, I saw him and his lovely wife Adele earlier. Tonight's conversation comes at a critical moment. We are in the middle of one of the most consequential decades in sports and history, and so much of that is running through America. It's kicking off, obviously, with the World Cup across the entire continent, but what we're seeing with the UFC this weekend is unprecedented and really shines light on the cultural values of America around the world. So many fighters and so many golfers come from different countries around the world, and that's the way that people experience their countries and how they experience America. And so again, everyone's a diplomat, and in our 250th year, I hope we'll continue to build on the values that sports teaches, whether it's resilience or whether it's making sure there's sportsmanship or courtesy. All those come together in what we're talking about tonight in diplomacy. It's more than competition, it's also connection. There's nothing that pulls people together like sports. You can be sitting next to the people that you're rooting for with your country in a way that you wouldn't get together in other formats. And it really helps diplomacy work. Right? There are times in the world where countries aren't talking, but athletes and sports and cultural figures are. And it's part of what we call here open diplomacy. So that's why we're especially pleased to convene tonight's program tonight. There are so many people who are shaping the future of sports, which is shaping the future of the world and truly building a more peaceful and prosperous world. And I want to thank you all for being here. So I get to welcome to the stage three panelists tonight. John Ourand, the sports correspondent at Puck, Brian Rolapp, the CEO of the PGA Tour, and Mark Shapiro, the President and Chief Executive Operating Officer of TKO. So let's give them a round of applause.
Well, this is a real treat, having these two on stage here. But Mark, I want to start with you, because Kirk Herbstreit is a famous college football announcer, pro football announcer, and he had a post on social media at the end of the Knicks game last night where you were jumping around like just like a little kid. And as we're getting ready to talk today about the power of sports and what sports can do to bring communities together, like describe what that was like.
Yeah, I think you got to break it up into two parts. John's also obviously referring to the NBA Finals game last night at Madison Square Garden, where the San Antonio Spurs were up by 29 points over the New York Knicks, and the Knicks somehow found a way to come back and literally win it in the final seconds, and the Garden just erupted. But it's interesting, and David said it, about sports unifying us. I mean, that is the common shared language of sports, right? And you can never determine the outcome. It's a different outcome every time. And the crowd, of course, thinks they have a hand or a say in the outcome. I mean, that's the greatness of sports. There's the certainty of the event, but the uncertainty of the outcome. And I would just tell you, last night, you had a first half where the entire arena was unified, completely unified in their distrust and deceit for the referees. So they were unified, and you saw them together as one. It was a very hostile environment. And then at the end, and I'm not even a day-to-day New York Knicks fan, I'm from Chicago, I will just tell you that that happens, and that's just one of those glorious moments. And you're looking around, and phones are up in the air, and everyone's hugging each other, right? There's no hate, there's no dislike, there's no friction, there's sadness on the Spurs side, but it's in New York, so the majority of fans are New Yorkers and Knicks fans, and there's just love. And I would tell you, at a time like this, sports and entertainment have never been more important, right? What do we have? We have political division, right? We have constant stress. We have information overload, and sports and entertainment provide a shared cultural language, a language which allows us to get away, to connect with people, and to sustain emotional well-being. And it's really a unicorn. And last night, mine was just a genuine reaction of just shock.
And I can't emphasize this enough. I've covered you for 25 years. You've been in the business for a long time. You were last year, Puck said that you were the executive of the year for sports. You've seen it all, and still something happened with a team that you don't even particularly like that much, and you're jumping around.
Exactly. I just didn't expect it, right? It just, they surely can't come back from 29 points. And I'm sitting with Larry David and John McEnroe, and they're longtime Knicks fans, and the whole game they're mad, and they're not talking to anyone, they're not getting out of their seat, crossing their legs, these menacing faces, and then all of a sudden, they're jumping on top of each other, and it's just one of those moments. The ball goes up, and it hits the rim, and they came so close, and then somebody flies out of the sky and puts it back in, and the whole place just blows up. I mean, it just really, only sports can do that. Only sports can do that.
When was the last time you jumped around at a golf tournament, NFL game?
Last time I jumped around was when Mark asked me to do this panel with him. That's probably the last time.
So the idea of this panel is really to talk about the globalization of sports and sports as a unifier. As you look at international markets and as you look internationally, what are the types of things that you're looking for with the PGA Tour?
Well, I mean, I think anyone in the sports business looks for exactly what Mark is talking about, is that I can't think of any other thing other than sports that is a universal language. You don't have to speak a language. You understand human competition. All the things that Mark talked about. I also think what sports has and golf has is there's a meritocracy to it. And I think golf is sort of one of those sports where it's like you eat what you kill. Like it's one stroke over 4 days. And sports is one of the one places on this earth where people can look at it and like the best actually come to the top. And that's a universal human interest and emotion and that's where the stories come from, right? The stories come from the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And so that's why sports in general is just international and universal, which you can't find anywhere. So there are lots of things when we look at tournaments internationally. We have a great partnership with the European Tour. It is an international sport. People play all over the world. But I think what translates, even if you don't play the sport, is the things that we're talking about here. I was at the NFL for 23 years, and we played football games in London and all these other places. There's not many football fans in London, but they understand human competition, and that's extremely interesting, especially in this tech-heavy AI world where what's real, what's not. I'll tell you what's real, what's going on the field or on the course with human competition. That's just increasingly genuine for people.
UFC, WWE, they've gone international completely. What are the things that you're looking about market to market to make you say that that's a market that we want to go to?
Look, I think both are unique and original and individual in the sense that they recognized a long time ago that there's a larger world out there beyond just the United States. And whether that's the expansion of Asia or Europe and the way they have really gravitated and embraced sports to islands and territories all over the world, there's just followings, there's interests, there's rooting, there's storylines, there's hero, there's villain, there's elation, there's sadness, all these attributes, right? And all these emotions that run through are all consistent across all sports all over the world. Of course, it might be cricket in India, where it's more football for us, and in Europe, it might be a different kind of football, but that's what it is, and everybody connects to that. So when we look at our sports, we'll use AI, we'll use social chatter, right? We'll use writers that we have on the ground. Where are we popping? Like, where are we seeing interest? Where are we seeing followings? Especially sports is very provincial. So where you have local storylines or local heroes, we'll tap into that. And as that following starts to get a critical mass, bang, we'll bring an event to that city. And we will capitalize on the crowds, on the chatter, on all the earned media, on the advertising we get, and of course, on the local sponsorship opportunities to use our marks and use our athletes to really ultimately grow our brand. And UFC is pretty well spread around the world. I mean, we're having enormous success in Europe, enormous success in Asia, enormous success in Australia. We're a monster audience in Canada. And now WWE is seeing that same path. They're already ginormous in the United States, but really starting to click in Europe, really starting to click in Australia, already big in Canada, and in India, they already have a strong foothold as well. So it's really capitalizing and then figuring out how often do you need to come back to really keep priming the pump. And if you can get yourself a global audience that sticks, where your messages and your events resonates, well, then you've got a pretty good business on your hand. And for the countries that we deal with, and I know there's a lot of ambassadors and some of our partners here in the audience, it's about bringing you events and matchups that will drive economic impact. And we do that in spades, whether it's hotels or it's fans coming out to the arenas or your restaurants being full. Like, that's really the name of the game. And then at the end of the day, everybody wins.
So it sounds to me, one of the words that I've heard here today several times is sports diplomacy. It sounds to me like you see an opportunity, a good business opportunity, you take advantage of the business opportunity, and the diplomacy comes after that. Brian, when you think of sports diplomacy, what do you think of? What does that mean?
I mean, I think it's using sports to certainly, you're furthering your business interest. Sports is probably one of the best businesses on earth for all the reasons we're talking about. It's authentic, but it's also what Mark talked about. It is one of the only places where people can actually rally around something that they have in common. And that common may be affinity for a team, it may be affinity for a sport. It might be, cheering on human competition, but that's what diplomacy is, and sports can do that. I mean, the original diplomacy in sports was the Olympics, which is, I don't know how old it is, over 100 years, and that's what it was about. It was about, can we put aside whatever political issue, whatever geopolitical problem we have, and what can we unify it around in healthy competition? And I think that exists in all sports. I mean, we have a PGA Tour is mainly centered in the U.S., but you look at our membership, and I think close to 40% are non-American and growing.
40?
I think that's the number, and it's a big number and growing all the time. And you're seeing the best golfers in the world, whether they're from South Africa or the UK or Spain, finding their way to our tour. But that just gives it a much international flavor. So I think diplomacy is about finding something that unifies everybody, which is why I think when you see controversy in sports, you always see when politics eke into it, there's an adverse reaction to it. And there's always debate about it. And I think when you look at sports fans, it doesn't matter where they are politically. What they don't like is when you invade sports with politics. This is the one place I can go. This is the one place I can turn on the television. This is the one place I can go to a stadium and feel unified. Do not bring whatever political issue. And every time that happens, it ekes into it, and it takes away from the authenticity of the sport. And I think sports fans don't like it. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. I don't care what their political affiliation is, but they want that to be sacrosanct as a place that this is where we go to unify. And I think for the sports industry, it's important that we keep that.
And I think that's front and center here this week with the UFC on the grandest stage of them all. Right? we've told all of our partners, all of our friends, all of our fans, this isn't about politics. Enough of that. We get enough of that, to Ryan's point. We're red, we're blue, you're in the center, whatever it is. We're not here to talk about policy and politics. We're here because we're fortunate enough that the President of the United States has decided, you know what, it's our 250th birthday, and we're going to open it up to a major event, and we're going to put it on the greatest stage of all. We're going to build it, the Claw, on the South Lawn, and I'm going to rely on my good friend Dana White to put together an amazing card that will create a crazy following, and we're going to have a chance to introduce the sport to new fans in new countries all over the world, and we're capitalizing on that. And that's what this is. This is a weekend of great events and fun and entertainment and energy and celebration.
Let me give you another example of that closer to home. So all day today, I spent all day on the Hill just meeting different people. And I was walking to my next meeting, there was a staffer there, and he asked me, like, what'd you think of the game last night? I'm like, oh my gosh, the Knicks were down by 29 points, and like, you know, I can't believe Fox tried to take a layup, he should have pulled it out, all this stuff. And he goes, no, I'm talking about the congressional baseball game. Which, by the way, I happened to watch SportsCenter, and like somebody made an amazing play on left field. It was a senator from somewhere. I don't know where it was. But
They put that on the top 10 just to make somebody feel good.
and then every meeting I had, there was a member of Congress who showed me the bat he had from the game last night. And we were meeting with Democrats and Republicans. So the point is like even there, which I would guess, I'm not an expert, is probably the most political places on the planet. They were talking about sports, and they were talking about playing with their colleagues from across the aisle. So that's a small example, but multiply that by 100 million, and that's what sports is. And Mark's going to have an amazing event this weekend. What sports fans don't want to hear about, they don't want to hear about ballrooms, they want to hear about like polling, they want to hear any of that. They want a sporting event. And I think that's great.
And when you talk more about that globalization, I think it also goes hand in hand with the strategy of if you build it, they will come. It's not just that you will put an event on in another country and they will come. They might. Sometimes it's just curiosity and the novelty. But ultimately, if it's good competition, right, and there's real good rivalry, then it expands, it starts to grow, it starts to bleed. Everyone wants to be a part of it. Everyone starts training. You start developing. You put money into it. You invest in it, and it goes to another level. And then when you start having the athletes reflect the fans, the countries, meaning Yao Ming in the NBA, right? Victor Wembanyama and on the San Antonio Spurs, right? When that starts to happen, Ohtani in the Los Angeles Dodgers, well, then you're really globalizing the game because now you've got rooting interest back home for their player who's on the American stage here.
Am I correct, Brian, in identifying a trend here? Today's the first day of the World Cup, and of course the World Cup's been around forever, as have the Olympics. But the hockey, the National Hockey League had its 4 nations. The NBA, for their All-Star game, decided to do, an international competition. There seems to be, it's a PGA of America, but the Ryder Cup, I'll take it every year. It's every 2 years, but it's a fantastic event. Yeah. Are we seeing more of this? And if so, why? And if no, then it's a very short answer to a long question.
No, I do think you're seeing more of it, and the reality is it's just, to speak frankly, it's a better business plan. Like nobody cared about the NHL All-Star game when it was East versus West. And I might even venture, I can't speak for hockey, so this is speculation. I'm not sure the players cared about it. One of the best sporting events I ever saw in my life was the U.S. versus Canada gold medal game at the Vancouver Olympics. They were all NHL players, and they were playing harder than any NHL playoff game I'd ever saw because they're playing for country. And that, I think when you see, country affiliation in sports, when it matters to the athletes, it matters to everybody else. And I think you see that in the Ryder Cup. I think you see it in the President's Cup, which we have as well. But it is a different, it transcends, it's bigger. And so I think that's why you see it. I'm not surprised, the NHL has been trying to figure out how to make that more meaningful. They just did that, and all of a sudden guys are like, oh, I'm playing for my country, you got it, I'm gonna go out there and leave it all on the ice. I think that matters, and I think it matters to fans. I also think it brings in fans who aren't normal fans of the sport, because the Olympics does that. How much figure skating have you watched since the Winter Olympics? I'm guessing 0. But somehow it's on primetime television during the Winter Olympics because it rates really well because people like to cheer for their country. It's natural emotion. So I think you always see sports leaning into that. And I think there's going to be more of it.
Kalshi would not have put that on the record there. I want to ask about Dana White, who is coming up next. I just did a story in Puck about 10 years ago. It was MMA was illegal in New York, and this weekend you're going to have something on the White House lawn. When you bought UFC, could you envision where it is right now? How did it get to where it is?
Yes, we could. We definitely
He's never
could.
made a bad decision. He knows
Not
Executive of the Year last year by Puck. Yeah.
No, not at the White House. Nobody
that's
would
what I
ever
meant.
envision
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But by the way, I would see a croquet tournament on the South Lawn just to go to the White House. So it's very exciting. The scene, obviously, the environment is not something you get every day, and it's a dream. And by the way, that's what Dana White had here. I mean, dare to dream, right? That's what Dana White did. He had a vision, he had a belief, he had a passion, and he needed a partner that was going to give him the means to be able to see it through and stick with him through twists and turns, ups and downs, because it never goes clean, no matter what you're inventing. And that's what he was doing. He was an entrepreneur. He was essentially inventing a sport for this country. And it took time, and it took resilience, and it took perseverance, and he had that partnership was a loyal partnership, and when it had its downs, it came back that much higher, that much faster. And now the UFC is, a massive sport in 210 countries and territories. And you know what? We also benefit from simplicity. While it's a hodgepodge of different disciplines that make up MMA, mixed martial arts, it's still at the end of the day, two individuals inside the ring or inside the octagon, and one is going to get knocked out or submit, and the other is not. And that's the same way with boxing, or that's golf, where you can't understand maybe which club I'm going to use, but I do know he wants to get the ball into the hole. I do know that in basketball, you want to get the ball into the net, and hockey and so on and so forth. So that simplicity allows you to really, at the end of the day, matriculate up and down the world with your sport. And if you have those personalities and storylines, it will stick, it will resonate, it will stick, and it will grow. Dana saw that, and I think we're just thrilled to see him realizing the vision.
Mark Shapiro is such a pro. You took us down to 0.0 on the dot.
once a producer, always a producer.
The producer, that's right.
I'm mesmerized. Two of the smartest people that I cover. Can't thank you enough for joining me up here.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.